So to make his belt, slip knot onto your hook in yellow, and we're going to chain 23. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 and 23. So I'm going to single crochet in the second chain from hook and in all other chains across. So this will give me a total of 22 single crochets. So if you remember, his waist is 20 stitches thick, so we're just doing a belt that's 2 stitches wider to compensate for going around his waist. So single crochet all the way across. Last 2 stitches. And then I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, and I'm going to single crochet all the way across again. So 22 single crochet back the opposite way. And when I get to the end, I can fasten off, trim, cut my yarn, and then I can sew him around Superman's waist. Okay, I'm nearly there. Two more stitches, 1 and 2. I'm going to chain 1 and cut my yarn to fasten off. Okay, so there's his belt, and if we bring Superman in, we are going to sew the belt around his waist. So it's starting to come together now. So with the end yarn, I'm going to thread the end, thread the tail. The first thing I'm going to do is sew the 2 ends together. Okay, and once the ends are joined, I'm going to turn the work, position the belt exactly where I want it, and I'm just going to do a couple of stitches going around his waist to make sure the belt doesn't just move about. Okie doke. And then I'm going to thread my yarn to come out somewhere random on his waist. And I'm going to do that also with my beginning yarn. There we go. And then I can cut them. So let's finish his face off. So I've got some DK black yarn, but if I was to do his eyebrows with this, I think it'd just be a little bit too thick. So DK yarn, double knit yarn, is 6 ply, which means it's made from 6 smaller strands. And if you untwist them, you are able to pull the strands apart. So I've unravelled the yarn so that I've got two ply in one side and 4 ply in the other side. And I'm going to separate that all the way down. You could also use embroidery floss if you've got that, but everyone tends to have black yarn in the house. Okay, doke. So cut the amount that you want, and we've got a little bit of a thinner yarn to make his mouth and his eyebrows with. So with a smaller needle, because I don't need my big embroidery needle, I will thread the needle, and then we're going to sew his mouth. So I'll start with his eyebrows first, and I'm going to come in at the side of his face, and I'll bring the needle out just before his first eye. Let's have a look. A little bit higher. And then sew his eyebrows on. You can sew them on however you want. I'm just going to do 2 nice straight lines. So you can see that one. I'm going to do the same for the other side. And then I'm going to come down and bring my needle out in the position to make his mouth. So that's a little bit far over for his mouth. If I'm looking at him, I think I'm going to get him there for his mouth. So if I go back in where the yarn come out from, and I can reposition the yarn. So I want him to have a kind of half side smile. So I'm going to do a straight line and then go 1 row up to do the side of his mouth. There we go. So I'm happy with that. So to finish his face off, I've got some blusher, and this was really cheap from Poundland. And a little goes a long way, so you only want the smallest amount. And we're going to rub that into his cheeks. And it's always best to put less on and then put more on as you need it. So there we go. All that's left to do for his face is to cut the ends of the black yarn and Superman's face is complete. So for the arms, we're going to begin with the same pink colour that we used for Superman's head. Start with a slip knot and we're going to chain 2. 1 and 2. Then we're going to do 6 single crochet in the second chain from hook. 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So now we're going to increase from 6 stitches to 9 stitches. So we're going to single crochet 1 and then do 2 single crochet in the next stitch, and we're going to do that 3 times. So into the first stitch, single crochet 1, and then increase in the next stitch for 2 and 3. Single crochet 4, and increase in the next stitch for 5 and 6. Single crochet in the next stitch for 7, and increase in the next stitch for 8 and 9. So we now have 9 stitches, and we're going to single crochet around 3 times. So for 27 stitches, 26 and 27. And now we're going to change to blue yarn. So in the next stitch, we're going to do a colour change. Okie doke. And now we're going to do 16 rounds of blim. So we're going to single crochet round 16 times. So we've just finished the arm, and I'm going to do a slip stitch and chain 1 and then cut my yarn. I'm going to leave a tail long enough to sew it on in a moment. So the next thing we need to do is stuff our arm, and I am using a pencil to help me. If I'd stuffed as a gun, I wouldn't need to use this, but I just got carried away in a crochet moment. So I'm stuffing the arm. And then you need to make a second arm. Obviously Superman has two. Okie doke. So I've got my two arms here and they're ready to be attached to him. So if I bring Superman into the middle, zoom out a little bit. The first thing we want to do is identify where the colour change is, even though it's only, you can't see it really bad, you don't want it showing, so you want that to be at the back of your work. And I'm just checking where placement will be. Okie doke. So with the first arm, or with both of them, but I'm just doing one arm first, we're going to close the gap by picking up the front loop only of the 9 stitches surrounding it. And there we go, you can see that it's already drawn the arm closed. So we're going to find the part that we want on the inside of our work. I'm going to check that's where I want it, and that's exactly right. So what I'm going to do now is sew the arm onto the side of Superman. And you can do this any way you want, whatever method you want to do it. But I do a couple of stitches on the top of his arm, attaching it to his body. And then I lift his arm up and I do a couple of stitches just underneath his arm, attaching it to the bottom row of his arm and to his body. Then I can put his arm back down. If you don't want his arm sticking out like this, you can do a few stitches going through the body from the arm. But this Superman is going to be a toy for a young boy and he'll want the arms to move, so I'm just doing a few stitches on the top and the bottom. And when you're happy that the arm's sewn on, you want to thread your needle through and weave in the end. Then we can take the second arm and do the same thing. So we're going to pick up the outside loop, the front loop only, of all the stitches around the arm, and that's going to close the gap. There we go. And then find the part we want facing inside. Hold it on to check where you want it, or pin it, whatever your preference is, and then sew the second arm. Lift his arm up and just do a couple of stitches underneath. And then weave in your ends. Okie doke, we're getting there. We just need to do a cape and then our Superman is ready to go and fight crime. Now for his cape we're going to be using a 4mm hook, and we're now going to be working with double crochet. So I'm going to do a slip knot onto my hook, and I'm going to chain 15. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. And I'm going to single crochet in the second chain from hook. And in all of the chains across. So we'll have 14 single crochet. Nearly there. So our next row is going to be double crochet. So at the end of this row, we're going to chain 2, because we're going to be working back in double crochet, and we're going to turn our work. And now we're going to do 2 double crochets in our first stitch. 1 and 2. I don't count the chain 2 as a double crochet here. And then I'm going to double crochet 10. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's 12. I'm double crocheting 12, not 10. 11. I think my brain just broke down. And 12. So double crochet 12, not 10. And in my last stitch, I'm going to do 2 single crochets. 2 double crochets. Okie doke. So we've just increased our count from 14 stitches to 16, and we did that by increasing in the first and last stitch of this row. We're then going to chain 2 and turn our work. And now we're just going to double crochet in each stitch across. So that'll be 16 double crochets. So that's 2. And 16. We're going to chain 2 and turn our work, and we're going to repeat them 2 rows again. So I'm going to do 2 double crochet in the first chain, double crochet all the way to the last stitch, and do 2 double crochet in the last stitch. So I'm going to increase this next row by 2 stitches, and then going to chain 2 and single crochet back, double crochet back. So 2 double crochet in the first stitch, and then I'm going to, let me work it out, so I'm going to double crochet 14 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14. I'm going to do 2 double crochet in the last stitch. 1 and 2. So I now have 18 stitches. I'm going to chain 2 and turn my work and single crochet back. So we're going to repeat these 2 rows by increasing 2 stitches, one at the front and one at the end of the row, and then double crocheting back along, and we're going to keep doing them 2 rows until we have 28 stitches. So you're going to increase 2 on one row and then just do a normal row double crochet, and when you have 28 stitches, I'll meet you back here. So I've now grew my cape to 28 stitches, and I'm going to chain 1, and I'm now going to single crochet around the entire cape. So just like with the logo, if there's no stitch, I'm just going to create one. It doesn't matter how many stitches you make. And in corners I'm going to do 3 single crochet to help turn. So I'm going to single crochet loosely because if I single crochet too tight, I can pull all the work up. So just single crochet down one side. Then when we get to the top corner, in the very corner stitch, I'm going to do 3 single crochet. 1, 2 and 3. And this will allow me to turn the work, so now I can work across the top row. So I'm working in the opposite, the bottom of our foundation row now. Then we get to the opposite corner and I'm going to do 3 single crochet in this corner. 1, 2 and 3. That'll allow me to rotate the work so I can work down the opposite side. And once I get to the bottom, I will slip stitch into the corner stitch and fasten off. So that is our cape done. So I'm just going to weave in this end before I attach it to Superman. So I'm going to put my tail on my embroidery needle and I'm going to weave it up the side, up the single crochets that I've just done up the side. And then I can trim it. And now at the top of the work I haven't left a long enough tail at the beginning, so I'm going to bring in some more red yarn and through the end I'm just going to hook it through one of the stitches and tie a knot. And with the long end I'm going to thread that onto my embroidery needle. Bring Superman in and I'm going to position the cloak as I want it. So I want it going obviously round his neck. I'm going to use a couple of pins to keep that in place. And with my embroidery needle, I'm going to go along the top cast on edge and sew the cape just around Superman's neck. Take the pins out. And once the pins are out, we can go check it's stable and go back the opposite way. Okie doke, and then we've just got a couple of ends to weave in, so I'm going to take the end yarn into Superman's body and I'm just going to sew it around until it's weaved in, and trim. I'm going to do that with the 2 end tails as well. And one more. And other than having a fluff with him, that is our Superman complete. So I like it when he has one of his capes over his shoulder. So if you choose to make this, please tag me in #TeenieCrochet on Instagram. I'll also leave a link in the description to my Ravelry store where you'll be able to purchase the written pattern for this and for the rest of the Justice League dolls on Amigurumi. And if you've stuck with me to the end, thank you. Please like, comment or subscribe. And the next one I think we'll be doing is Batman. So if you stick around for a week or so, your Batman tutorial will be up. So thank you so much. I'm Teenie Crochet and have a good one. Bye now.